Okay, so we talked about how to graph equations of lines using a table of values. And you guys did that last week, and we did some review on it, and you guys seem to have a good handle on it. And then on Friday, we talked about how to graph special types of lines, vertical and horizontal, and what their equations look like. So to finish up this lesson, I want to talk about the second, excuse me, the second method that we can use. And it's a good method because we never have to worry about solving for y, which we had to do with some of the equations when we did a table of values. So here's a line. What's the coordinate where it crosses the y-axis? What's the coordinate where it crosses the y-axis? Look at the point where it crosses the y-axis. What's that coordinate? Yeah. Come on. Come on. Up. 0, 4. Thank you. What's the point where it crosses the x-axis? -2, 0. Here's another one. What's the point where this one crosses the y-axis? 0, 1. What's the point where this one crosses the x-axis? Come on. 5, 0. Thank you. One more. What's the point where this one crosses the y-axis? Come on. 0, -6. Thank you. And the point where it crosses the x-axis. -6, 0. Good. Okay. So the idea here is to look for some patterns. Look at all three lines, the red, blue, and purple. Look at the points where they cross the y-axis. What do you notice? Look at all the points where these lines cross the y-axis. What do you notice? Or x is always 0. Yes. Okay. So at what point do these lines, we could say, cross the y-axis? The points where x is always 0. That's going to happen every time a line crosses the y-axis. X will always be 0. Okay. These points are called the y-intercepts. The points where the lines intersect the y-axis. Makes sense. X is always 0. Except we don't name a y-intercept by its coordinate, we just name it by the y value. So we would say the y-intercepts of above are 4, 1, and -6. Okay. So remember that. You can always find the y-intercept of a line by making x 0. And you can do the flip. At what point does this line cross the y-axis, or do these lines, the points where y is always equal to 0? And these points are called the x-intercepts. Y is always 0. So the x-intercepts of the above lines that I drew are -6, -2, and 5. So we use that to graph lines when we're given an equation. So if you're given an equation and you're asked to graph it, you only need 2 points. Table of values, I was asked to do 3. This method, you only need 2. Find the y-intercept using algebra. By making x equals 0 in the equation. And solving for y. That's 1 point. Second one, find the x-intercept. Then using algebra. By making y equals 0. And solving for x. So you're going to have 2 points. Stop the 2 points and draw your line. Stop the 2 points and draw your line. And that's it. So this method, you only need 2 points. You don't need 3. And you don't need to solve for y. So in many situations, this is actually a very handy method. So let's look at one example. Let's say you were asked to graph 3x minus 2y equals 6. Well, the table of values method, you got to get y by itself, which means you got to take the 3x over, and then you got to divide everything by -2, and then you got to make your table of values there. But if you use the intercepts method, we're going to make 2 equations to find 2 points. We're going to find the y-intercept by making x equals 0. And then we're going to find the x-intercept by making y equals 0. So all you do in this side is in the equation, just replace x with 0. So 3 times 0, that just cancels out. So you're left with negative 2y is equal to 6. So to get y by itself, divide both sides by negative 2. And the y-intercept is going to be negative 3. That means that it crosses, this line crosses the y-axis at 0, negative 3. Then you go back to the original equation and you make y equals 0. So now it's 3x minus 2 times 0 equals 6. Well, 2 times 0 is nothing. So you're left with 3x equals 6. Divide both sides by 3. And the x-intercept is 2. That means the second point on your line is going to be 2, 0. So plot those 2 points and draw your line. 0, negative 3, 2, 0. Draw your line. And you're done. The most common mistake students will make in this method is they think this is a point on the line. They solve each one and then they say, okay, 2 comma negative 3 is a point on the line. No. First of all, how do you graph a line if you only know 1 point? That doesn't make sense. It's impossible. Okay? Remember, you're finding 2 separate points. You're finding 2 separate points. Sorry, finding. Okay,